The Krellian plague swept through the Alari sector like a phantom fire, leaving billions dead across 3 star systems. Worlds that once pulsed with vibrant alien life fell silent, their grand cities becoming tombs. For months, the greatest scientific minds of the Draconis Empire and the Galactic Concord had found nothing, no cure, no vaccine, not even a slowing of its relentless march. Hope was a dying empire. Then, on the ravaged human colony of Kepler 186, a single data point defied the darkness. A 7-year-old boy, Alex Robinson, exposed and inexplicably, impossibly alive. He wasn't just alive. Biological scans showed no trace of the active Krellian pathogen. In a galaxy succumbing to despair, one human child was somehow immune. On Kepler 186, the air itself tasted of ash and antiseptic. John Robinson watched his adopted son, Alex, chase a dust mote dancing in the thin shaft of light, penetrating their makeshift shelter. The boy's laughter, a bright, impossible sound in this graveyard of a colony, echoed faintly. John's heart, a leaden thing scarred by the faces of his wife and so many friends now gone, clenched. He'd seen the plague's swift, merciless work firsthand. How Alex, who'd been in the same room as coughing, dying men and women, still skipped and hummed, was a torment John initially chalked up to some cruel statistical anomaly, a delayed sentence he dreaded with every sunrise. He pulled his worn jacket tighter, the chill of loss seeping deeper than the colony's failing life support. Dr. Aris Thorne, her face illuminated by the sickly green glow of a salvaged datapad, rubbed her temples. The colony's medical bay, once a prefab storage unit, was down to its last few ampules of broad-spectrum antivirals, useless against the Krellian, but a comfort for the dying. She was a xenobiologist, a specialist in alien pathogens, who'd been visiting Kepler 186 for a routine survey when the quarantine slammed down. Now she was its chief medical officer, coroner, and often its priest. The sheer virulence of the plague, the way it tore through any species with terrifying impartiality, left her feeling like a primitive shaman shaking sticks at a tidal wave. Her instruments were failing, her knowledge insufficient. It was John, his voice hoarse from unshed grief and a burgeoning, terrifying thought, who broke through her exhaustion. "Doctor," he'd said, gesturing to Alex, who was now meticulously arranging pebbles into a complex pattern. He was with Henderson, right next to him when he went, that was 3 days ago. Alex hasn't even sniffled. Thorne had initially offered tired reassurances, spoke of variable incubation periods, but John persisted, day after day. He ate the same rations as Miller's family. They're all gone. He's fine. His insistence, born of a desperate, illogical hope, began to chip away at Thorne's scientific resignation. There was something in Alex's unwavering vitality, a stark contrast to the universal decay, that finally snagged her professional curiosity. With a sigh that carried the weight of 1,000 lost souls, Thorne agreed to run what tests she could. The equipment was unreliable, reagents scarce. She drew Alex's blood, the boy wincing but brave, distracted by John's quiet stories. Hours later, hunched over the jury-rigged bioscanner, Thorne's breath hitched. She ran the diagnostic again and again. The Krellian pathogen markers weren't just absent. Where they should have been, the scanner depicted a flurry of activity. Alex's own cells, vibrant and aggressive, systematically dismantling the viral structures. It was impossible. It was happening. Her own blood ran cold, then hot with a dizzying surge of adrenaline. "John," she whispered, her voice trembling, "get over here. You need to see this." The few remaining colonists, a dozen hollow-eyed survivors huddled in the main dome, received the news in stunned silence. John stood with one hand gripping Alex's small shoulder, the other clenching and unclenching. Dr. Thorne's voice, usually calm and measured, cracked as she explained the readings. Disbelief warred with a fragile, terrifying hope on their faces. This small, oblivious child, who still asked when the supply ships were coming with more juice boxes, carried something monumental within him. The weight of it pressed down on them all, a burden of potential salvation almost too heavy to bear. Later, the hum of the failing atmospheric recyclers the only sound. Thorne faced John. "We have to report this, John. You understand that. If what I'm seeing is real, this is bigger than Kepler. This is bigger than humanity." John's face, already etched with grief, hardened with a fierce, protective terror. "Report him? To who? The Draconis? The Concord? They'll treat him like a specimen Aris. He's 7 years old. They'll tear him apart to find what they want." "And if we don't," Thorne countered, her own anguish evident, "billions more will die. We don't have the resources here to understand it, let alone replicate it. It's his only chance, and theirs." The argument was short, brutal, and ended with John's choked consent, a sacrifice torn from his soul. Using the colony's long, dormant emergency beacon, its power cells painstakingly recharged, Dr. Thorne composed the encrypted message. It was a sliver of data, a coded plea containing humanity's most profound secret. John watched her fingers fly across the console, his heart a frantic drum against his rib. With a final soft chime, the message launched a whisper of data, a ghost of a signal, streaking through the cold, uncaring dark between worlds, carrying the fate of galaxies on its fragile back. The isolation of Kepler 186 felt absolute. The chance of that signal reaching anyone who could or would help, infinitesimally small. Deep within the Draconis Empire's strategic command nexus, a vast silent chamber, where constellations of data flowed across immense holo displays, Commander Valerius surveyed the cascading reports of planetary system failures. His scaled jaw was tight, his tripartite eyes burning with a cold, controlled fury. For months, every strategy, every scientific breakthrough his ancient and powerful race possessed, had shattered against the Krellian plague. An aide, a slender Xylossian with quivering antennae, approached, its usual precise movements hesitant. "Commander, a tertiary listening post in the outer rim has intercepted a peculiar transmission. Low priority, human origin, from the Kepler 186F system." Valerius's head tilted, a slow, dangerous movement. Humans? That primitive, scattered species? What could they possibly offer but another tally for the dead? The aide presented the decrypted summary. "They claim immunity, Commander." In a juvenile, a harsh, rasping sound, the Draconis equivalent of a scoff, escaped Valerius. Preposterous. Yet, every fleet admiral, every chief xenobiologist, every allied species had offered nothing but more eulogies. He stared at the symbol for Kepler 186, a forgotten speck in a dying sector. "One child," he mused, the words like stones in his mouth, "against a plague that has humbled empires." A flicker of something unreadable crossed his reptilian features. Desperation was a powerful solvent, capable of dissolving even the most ingrained skepticism. "Dispatch the Stardust Lance," he commanded, his voice resonating with grim authority. "Medical science vessel, highest priority. Verify this anomaly. It is likely nothing, but we have nothing left but nothing." The Draconis medical frigate, the Scalpel's Edge, pierced through the atmosphere of Kepler 186. Its hull, a seamless obsidian teardrop etched with glowing cerulean veins, was a monument to alien precision, a stark contrast to the patchwork settlements clinging to the ravaged world below. A formal request, cold and demanding, echoed through the colony's comms. "Kepler 186. This is Draconis vessel Scalpel's Edge. We require immediate contact regarding Subject Robinson." Commander Valerius, his reptilian eyes narrowed, led the boarding party. His scaled face, framed by feathery cranial crests, betrayed no emotion as he surveyed the makeshift landing platform. The airlock hissed open, releasing a gust of sterile, recycled air that smelled faintly of ozone and something indefinably alien. His gaze swept over the assembled humans, their faces etched with worry, their clothes patched and worn. A dismissive flick of his wrist signaled his assessment: inefficient, contained, but barely. Alex Robinson, clutching a worn plush toy, peeked from behind John's leg. The Draconis were impressive. Towering figures in gleaming armor, their movements precise and economical. But their eyes, those cold, reptilian eyes, sent a shiver down his spine. He squeezed John's hand tighter. Dr. Thorne stepped forward, offering a data slate to Valerius. "Commander, I'm Dr. Aris Thorne. I've compiled all relevant data regarding Alex's condition." Valerius accepted the slate without a word, his gaze flicking over the information with unnerving speed. "Efficiency is appreciated, Doctor. However, independent verification is required." He turned to Nova, a younger Draconis whose iridescent scales shimmered subtly in the dim light. "Linguist, initiate scans." Nova nodded, her multifaceted eyes focusing on Alex. She approached him cautiously, extending a small handheld device. "Subject Robinson, this will be a brief, non-invasive scan. Please remain still." Alex flinched, burying his face in John's side. John knelt, his voice low and reassuring. "It's okay, buddy. Just a little light. It won't hurt." The scanner emitted a soft hum as it passed over Alex. Nova's expression remained unreadable, but a flicker of something curiosity crossed her features. "Commander," she reported, her voice a melodic cadence of clicks and whistles translated into human speech, "scans confirm complete absence of active Krellian pathogens. Viral load 0. Valerius remained unmoved. "Anomalous, but not conclusive. Subject Robinson will be transported to Aegis Station for further study." John stepped forward, his voice hardening. "Transported? With all due respect, Commander, Alex is a child. He needs stability, familiar surroundings." Valerius cut him off, his voice like shards of ice. "Sentimentality is a luxury we cannot afford, human. Billions are dying. Aegis Station possesses the resources necessary to unlock the secrets of his immunity. His comfort is secondary." Nova, observing the exchange, subtly adjusted her stance, her head tilting almost imperceptibly. She noted the tension in John's shoulders, the protective way he shielded Alex. Interesting, she thought. Such displays of emotional bonding are rarely observed in species with such limited cognitive capacity. Aboard the Scalpel's Edge, Alex pressed his face against the viewport, watching Kepler 186 if shrink into a dull grey sphere. The sterile, recycled air scratched at his throat, and the hum of the ship's engines vibrated uncomfortably in his bones. He missed the familiar smells of the colony, the earthy scent of the hydroponics farm, the smoky aroma of John's makeshift stove. He missed his friends, his toys, his bed. John knelt beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Hey, it's okay, sport. We'll be back before you know it. We're just helping those nice aliens find a way to make everyone better." Dr. Thorne, watching them from across the cramped cabin, felt a pang of guilt. He knew the truth that Alex was more than just a helper. He was a specimen, a key to survival in a galaxy teetering on the brink. But how could he explain that to a 7-year-old? Aegis Station loomed before them, a colossal structure of interlocking modules, bathed in the harsh glare of a distant sun. Its sheer scale was overwhelming, a testament to Draconis engineering prowess. But it was also cold, sterile, and utterly alien. Valerius led them through a maze of corridors, the air thick with the hum of machinery and the murmur of Draconis voices. They arrived at a central briefing room, where a holographic display shimmered with complex data streams. "Welcome to Aegis Station," Valerius announced, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Here we will dedicate all available resources to understanding Subject Robinson's immunity. Dr. Thorne, you will have access to our facilities and personnel. However, I must reiterate, the priority is the development of a cure. Any distractions will not be tolerated." He glanced pointedly at John. "Subject Robinson's well-being is important, but secondary to the survival of the galaxy." The initial research phase began immediately. Alex was subjected to a battery of non-invasive scans, his blood drawn, his saliva collected. John watched every procedure with hawk-like intensity, his heart made, his hand never far from Alex. He questioned every protocol, challenged every assumption, creating a constant undercurrent of friction. In the biolabs, Draconis scientists, led by Nova, analyzed Alex's blood samples with meticulous precision. Their instruments, far more advanced than anything Thorne had ever seen, probed the very depths of Alex's cellular structure. But their initial attempts to apply existing Draconis immunological models yielded nothing. The data simply didn't fit. The child's immune response is illogical. Nova reported to Thorne, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the complex data streams. "Our models predict a cascade failure, yet his system remains perfectly stable." Thorne nodded, his brow furrowed. "That's because you're looking at it from a Draconis perspective, Nova. You're trying to fit a human solution into an alien framework. We evolved on a death world, remember? Our immune systems are hyper-adaptive. We're constantly bombarded with pathogens, toxins, radiation. We've had to evolve to survive in conditions that would kill most other species." Valerius, overhearing the conversation, scoffed. "Such primitive resilience is hardly a scientific explanation, Doctor. We require quantifiable data, not anecdotal observations." That evening, a Draconis medical drone delivered a tray of nutrient paste to Alex's quarters. The paste, a grayish-green substance with a vaguely metallic scent, was considered optimal for biological function, a perfectly balanced blend of proteins, carbohydrates, and essential minerals. Alex wrinkled his nose. "What is that?" John examined the paste with a skeptical eye. "Looks like space-flavored gruel." "I don't think so." He rummaged through his meager belongings, pulling out a package of dehydrated rations he'd managed to smuggle aboard. "Here, sport. How about some real food? Later, as John tucked Alex into bed, he heard Valerius's voice echoing from the corridor. The tests are yielding limited results. We must accelerate the research. More invasive procedures are required. John's blood ran cold. The following morning, as Draconis technicians prepared Alex for a bone marrow biopsy, John confronted Valerius, his voice trembling with barely suppressed rage. "This is too much, Commander. He's just a kid. You can't keep poking and prodding him like some lab rat." Valerius remained impassive. "The fate of the stars rests on this child, human. Sacrifices must be made." "Sacrifices?" John roared, his voice echoing through the sterile corridor. "He's already lost his parents, his home. How much more do you want from him?" Nova, drawn by the commotion, watched from the shadows. She saw the raw pain in John's eyes, the unwavering protectiveness he displayed towards the child. She heard the tremor in his voice, the desperate plea for compassion. Such illogical behavior, she thought, yet undeniably compelling. The initial attempts to synthesize the immune factors from Alex's blood yielded limited and unstable results. The Draconis scientists grew increasingly frustrated, their complex algorithms failing to decipher the secrets of his unique biology. Pressure mounted from Valerius, who demanded accelerated progress. "We are wasting time," he declared, his voice imbued with impatience. "We must consider more direct methods." John, overhearing the conversation, felt a surge of protectiveness. He knew what Valerius meant. More invasive tests, more risks for Alex. He wouldn't let it happen. He couldn't. He would protect Alex at any expense, even if it meant defying the Draconis Empire itself. Alex thrashed in his sleep, a faint tremor running through his small frame. Muffled alien screams echoed in his mind, distorted images of suffering Draconis citizens flashing behind his closed eyelids. The soft hum of the Draconis life support systems couldn't mask the phantom sounds of the Krellian plague's relentless march. His brow furrowed, and he whimpered, a word escaping his lips, a word he shouldn't know, couldn't know. Krell. The Draconis monitoring systems, ever vigilant, registered the shift. A rapid series of beeps pierced the sterile silence of the observation room. A holographic display flickered, showing a sharp spike in Alex's immune cell activity. Nova, her reptilian eyes narrowed in concentration, reviewed the data logs in her lab. Holographic graphs shimmered around her, intricate waveforms depicting Alex's physiological state. She paused, her clawed fingers hovering over a control panel. Rewinding the data stream, she zoomed in on the precise moment of the immune spike, aligning it with the sensor readings from Alex's sleep cycle. "Fascinating," she murmured, her voice a low, guttural hum. "A transient but significant increase in T-cell potency, coinciding precisely with the onset of REM sleep and elevated stress hormones. But why?" Thorne entered the lab, his face etched with concern. "Anything new, Nova?" Nova rotated the holographic display, presenting the data to Thorne. "A marked immune response during a nightmare. The question is, what triggered it?" Thorne stroked his chin, his eyes thoughtful. "It's not just the stress hormones, Nova. It's the source of the stress. Nightmares. They're a powerful human experience, a manifestation of deep-seated fears and anxieties. Perhaps that emotional intensity is triggering something within his immune system." Commander Valerius strode into the lab, his presence filling the room with an air of authority. "Dr. Thorne, with all due respect, we are dealing with a plague that has decimated entire star systems. I find it difficult to believe that a child's bad dream holds the key to a galaxy-saving cure." Focus on the quantifiable biological markers, not emotional whims. The following morning, a bowl of bland grey draconis nutrient paste sat untouched on Alex's bedside table. He wrinkled his nose, pushing it away with a small hand. "I don't like it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "It tastes like nothing." The paste, a homogeneous mass of processed proteins and synthesized vitamins, sat like a lumpen monument to draconis efficiency, its unappetizing texture a stark contrast to the vibrant flavors of Earth food. Later that day, John was hunched over a draconis food replicator, his brow furrowed in concentration. Tools lay scattered around him, their metallic surfaces gleaming under the harsh laboratory light. He muttered to himself, tracing the intricate internal circuitry with a practiced hand. "All right, let's see if I can't whip up something a little more palatable." The replicator hummed, its internal mechanisms whirring as John inputted a series of complex commands. Moments later, a steaming bowl of something resembling a simple stew emerged, its aroma filling the small quarters with a comforting, familiar scent. Alex, his eyes widening with anticipation, eagerly devoured the replicated food. He smiled at John, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. Nova, observing from a discreet distance, made a note on her datapad. "Curious. His nutrient absorption rate has increased by 7%, and his stress levels have decreased significantly." The draconis monitors displayed a subtle but undeniable improvement in his overall health markers. In a nearby laboratory, draconis scientists struggled to incorporate the emotional variable into their research protocols. Holographic displays flickered with complex equations, their faces etched with frustration. "This is illogical," one scientist muttered, his reptilian eyes narrowed in concentration. "How can we quantify subjective emotional states?" Another scientist sighed, running a clawed hand over his crest. "Perhaps we need to develop a new form of biometric analysis, one that can measure the intangible." Suddenly, a nearby analytical machine sparked, smoked, and shut down with a loud bang. Alarms blared, their shrill sound echoing through the laboratory. "The system overloaded!" a draconis technician shouted, his voice permeated with panic. "It appears the complexity of the human proteome exceeded its analytical capacity." The news from the galactic front lines grew increasingly grim. Valerius received a coded message, Draconis colony, image unclear and wavering. The speaker, a senior official, seemed very anxious. "Commander Valerius, Aegis Station, this is Colony 1. We are struggling. Order is breaking down. We need help right now." The signal died suddenly, lost in the noise. Valerius frowned hard, his face tight. The weight of his dying civilization rested heavily on his shoulders. Later that evening, Valerius proposed a risky experiment in a meeting with John and Thorne. The holographic table in the center of the room shimmered with complex diagrams and scientific data. "We must accelerate our research," Valerius stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "I propose a controlled exposure of Alex's blood samples to a concentrated form of the Krellian pathogen. It is the only way to definitively identify the mechanism of his immunity." John recoiled, his eyes flashing with anger. "You want to infect him? Are you crazy?" Valerius remained impassive. "It is a calculated risk, Robinson, a necessary one. The potential benefits outweigh the potential harm." John paced in his quarters, his internal conflict tearing him apart. "I can't let them hurt him. But what if this is the only way to save everyone? What if I'm standing in the way of a cure?" He turned to Thorne, his voice pleading. "Are you sure this is safe, Aris? Really sure?" Thorne placed a hand on John's shoulder, his voice calm and reassuring. "John, I understand your concerns. I wouldn't propose this if I thought it would put Alex at significant risk. We'll monitor him closely, but the potential benefits, they're enormous. This could be the breakthrough we need." The experiment was conducted the following day. Alex, lying in bed, looked pale and weak. Draconis monitors displayed a temporary but concerning dip in his health markers. John knelt beside him, his hand stroking his hair. "It's okay, buddy," he whispered. "I'm here." Nova, witnessing Alex's distress after the experiment, directly confronted Valerius in his office. "Commander," she said, her voice uncharacteristically sharp, "I must protest. The experiment was conducted with insufficient regard for the child's well-being. We are scientists, not torturers. There must be a better way." Days later, Nova was reviewing sensor logs, focusing on the period after the experiment. She isolated a distinct biosignature that appeared only when John was near Alex, comforting him. She paused, her reptilian eyes widening in surprise. An unusual energy emission, localized, transient, and correlated precisely with moments of close physical contact and emotional reassurance. Intriguing. Thorne and Nova were discussing the biosignature in the lab, their voices hushed with excitement. "What if that biosignature is more than just a byproduct of emotional connection, Nova?" Thorne proposed, his eyes gleaming with inspiration. "What if it's a catalyst, a signal that activates dormant immune mechanisms within Alex's cells?" Valerius, listening to their explanation, his expression skeptical but intrigued, entered the lab. "So, you are suggesting that we need to study love?" He paused, his gaze hardening. "This is preposterous. But," pauses, "the data is undeniable. Very well. Allocate resources to investigate this. Biosignature. But do not neglect the primary objective, identifying the quantifiable biological factors responsible for his immunity." The research focus, however reluctantly, had begun to shift. But it's slow, and replicating the human factor for mass production is the new hurdle. John found Valerius in the observation room, the Draconis commander's reptilian eyes fixed on Alex, who was sleeping peacefully in his quarantine chamber. The low hum of the life support systems was the only sound. John's face hardened as he saw the unfamiliar device hovering near Alex's head, emitting a faint blue light. "What is that?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Valerius didn't turn. "A more comprehensive scan, Robinson. We need detailed neurological data. Time is of the essence. Without my consent, without Alex's." John stepped closer, his hands clenched. "You authorized this while he was sleeping? That's a clear violation of the agreement." Valerius finally turned, his gaze unwavering. "The agreement prioritizes galactic health, Robinson. Sentimentality is a luxury we cannot afford. The data acquired will save billions." "And what about Alex's rights?" John's voice rose. "He's not a lab rat, he's a child. You can't just poke and prod him whenever you feel like it." "He is unique," Valerius conceded, his tone softening slightly. "But his uniqueness is a resource we must utilize to its fullest potential." "He's not a resource," John exploded, stepping directly in front of Valerius. "He's a living being, and I will not allow you to treat him like some specimen." Across the room, Nova watched the confrontation unfold, her expression troubled. She excused herself from her workstation and approached Thorne, who was reviewing data logs nearby. "Dr. Thorne, she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I must speak with you, privately." Thorn raised an eyebrow, sensing her unease. He followed her to a secluded corner of the lab. "What is it, Nova?" Nova hesitated, her gaze darting back towards Valerius and John. "Commander Valerius, he pressured me to remain silent regarding the enhanced scan of Alex. I expressed my concerns, but he dismissed them." Thorn's eyes narrowed. "You knew about this?" Nova nodded, her expression filled with guilt. "I did. I believed it was a necessary measure. But seeing Robinson's reaction, I am not certain anymore. It felt unethical." "It was unethical," Thorn said firmly. "Informed consent is paramount, especially when dealing with a child. Thank you for telling me, Nova. Your honesty is appreciated." "I am conflicted," Nova admitted. "My duty is to the Draconis Empire, but I am beginning to question our methods. There must be a balance between scientific progress and ethical considerations." Thorn nodded. "Exactly. And that's why I believe we need to establish a human baseline. A comprehensive understanding of human physiology and psychology to better interpret Alex's unique responses." Valerius, having concluded his argument with John, for now, overheard the last part of their conversation. He approached them, his expression skeptical. "A human baseline, Dr. Thorn? With all due respect, that sounds like a frivolous waste of time and resources. We are dealing with a plague that is decimating entire star systems. We do not have time for anthropological studies." "It's not just anthropology, Commander," Thorn countered. "It's about understanding the context of Alex's immunity, his environment, his emotions, his cultural background. All of these factors could be influencing his biological responses." "Speculation," Valerius scoffed. "We need concrete data, not philosophical musings." "But what if the philosophical musings are the key to unlocking the data?" Thorn persisted. "We've been approaching this from a purely Draconis perspective, trying to fit Alex into our existing paradigms. But what if human biology operates on a different set of principles?" Valerius remained unconvinced. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, Dr. Thorn, but I cannot authorize a full-scale investigation into human culture. We have a plague to cure." John, who had been listening intently, stepped forward. "Then let me help. I know Alex better than anyone. I can provide insights into his personality, his habits, his emotional state. I can participate in the research, not just as a guardian, but as a consultant." Valerius hesitated, his gaze shifting between John and Thorn. He clearly disliked the idea of a civilian interfering with his scientific protocols, but he also recognized the desperation of the situation. "Very well, Robinson. You may participate in the observation sessions, but you will adhere to my instructions. Understood?" "Understood," John replied, his eyes fixed on Valerius. "But if I see you even thinking about subjecting Alex to another unauthorized scan, this consultation will be over." Days turned into weeks. The research continued, but the progress was slow. Alex, confined to his sterile quarantine chamber, began to exhibit signs of homesickness. He grew listless and withdrawn. His appetite waned, and he often stared longingly at the holographic projections of Earth landscapes. "He misses home," John said to Thorn, his voice filled with concern. "He misses the trees, the grass, the smell of rain. He misses the real Earth. We've tried to replicate the sensory environment using Draconis holographic technology," Thorn said, his expression thoughtful. "But it seems the artificiality of the simulation is only exacerbating his distress. One afternoon, John found Alex sitting in a corner of his chamber, drawing on a piece of recycled paper with a crayon. He was drawing a forest, but the trees were stunted and lifeless, and the sky was a dull gray color. "What are you drawing, buddy?" John asked gently. "Earth," Alex said quietly, his voice barely audible. "But it doesn't look right." John's gaze fell upon a pile of discarded Draconis waste recycling components in a corner of the chamber. An idea sparked in his mind. "Maybe I can fix that," he said, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He spent the next several hours tinkering with the components, repurposing them into a rudimentary hydroponics system. He scavenged nutrient solutions from the Draconis labs, and with Thorn's help, acquired a selection of earth plant seeds. Soon, a small patch of earth plants was thriving within Alex's quarantine chamber. Fragrant herbs, leafy greens, and colorful flowers filled the air with their natural scents. The effect on Alex was immediate and dramatic. His eyes lit up, his appetite returned, and he spent hours tending to his miniature garden. His laughter echoed through the chamber once more. Thorn, observing the transformation, was astonished. "It's remarkable," he said to Nova. "The presence of real plants has had a demonstrably positive impact on his mood and immune function. His T-cell count has increased significantly." The Draconis scientists, initially skeptical, began to analyze the data from the hydroponics experiment. They discovered a unique interaction between the plant's emitted biosignatures and Alex's immune cells. Certain compounds released by the plants seemed to be activating dormant defense mechanisms within his body. "It appears there is a symbiotic relationship at play," Nova said, her voice filled with wonder. "Human evolution on Earth may have fostered a dependence on specific environmental factors, including plant-based compounds, for optimal immune function." Thorn nodded. "It's a paradigm shift in understanding human biology. We've been so focused on the internal mechanisms, we've overlooked the importance of the external environment." Just then, a priority alert flashed across the lab's main display. Valerius rushed to the console, his expression grim. "Report," he barked. "Commander," a Draconis officer replied, his voice tight with urgency. "We have detected a mutation in the Krellian plague. It is even more virulent and resistant to existing containment protocols." Valerius's reptilian eyes widened in alarm. "How long before it spreads?" "Estimates are within days, Commander. We are losing control." Valerius turned to Thorn, his expression desperate. "Dr. Thorn, we need a breakthrough. Now, whatever you are doing, accelerate it. The galaxy is depending on you." He paused, his gaze hardening. "And if you fail, I shudder to think of the consequences." As Valerius turned away, Alex was drawing again. This time, he wasn't drawing a forest. He was drawing stars. A specific constellation that didn't appear in any Draconis star charts. "What's that, Alex?" Thorn asked gently. "A healing star," Alex replied, pointing to the drawing. "Grandma used to tell me stories about it. She said it protects us." Thorn felt a chill run down his spine. He rushed to the Draconis database, searching for any mention of the constellation. He found nothing. Then he switched to the Human Historical Archives. There, buried within ancient Earth mythology, he found it. A constellation linked to legends about a healing star, a celestial protector. He presented his findings to Nova. "What if," Thorn began, his voice barely a whisper, "what if the human subconscious is influencing Alex's immune system, activating dormant defense mechanisms based on deeply ingrained cultural beliefs?" Nova stared at him, her expression a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. "That is highly unorthodox," Dr. Thorne. But I cannot dismiss the evidence before us. Just then Nova noticed something on the monitors. Doctor, look at this. She pointed to a previously overlooked protein marker in Alex's blood. It only becomes active during periods of heightened emotional connection or exposure to specific plant-based compounds. Hope surged through Thorne. That's it? That's the key. The Draconis scientists immediately attempted to synthesize the protein marker, but the resulting compound was unstable and ineffective. It was another setback, a stark reminder of the complexity of replicating the human biological system. The cure remained elusive, and the galaxy teetered on the brink of annihilation. The hum of the Aegis Station labs filled the air, a symphony of scientific endeavor. Thorne, his brow furrowed in concentration, adjusted the sonic emitter. Nova, her reptilian eyes gleaming with focused intensity, monitored the readings on the holographic display. Frequency stable, Dr. Thorne. Introducing the Earth. Derived sonic resonance now. Thorne nodded, his finger hovering over the activation button. Here we go. For all the marbles. He pressed the button. A low, almost imperceptible hum filled the lab, a faint echo of Earth's natural soundscape. The protein marker solution, previously cloudy and unstable, began to clear, its molecules aligning into a perfect crystalline structure. Stabilization achieved, Nova announced, a rare hint of triumph in her voice. The protein marker is viable. Days later, in a quarantined section of the station's medical wing, a group of critically ill human volunteers lay in their beds, their faces pale and gaunt. John Robinson stood by, his hand hovering over Alex's shoulder, his heart pounding in his chest. Dr. Thorne moved from patient to patient, administering the synthesized protein marker. "It's going to be all right, John," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "We've done everything we can." The hours that followed stretched into an eternity. Then, slowly, miraculously, signs of recovery began to emerge. The volunteers' breathing became easier, their color returned, their vital signs stabilized. A collective sigh of relief swept through the medical wing. The protein marker worked. The final hurdle was scalability. Nova, poring over the data, had a sudden realization. Dr. Thorne, the Draconis bioreactors, with a modification and a seed culture of ethically sourced human stem cells. We can mass produce the protein marker. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of hope across the galaxy. Commander Valerius, standing before a holographic representation of the galactic Concord, addressed the assembled representatives. The Krellian plague has met its match. Thanks to the extraordinary resilience of humanity, the ingenuity of Dr. Aris Thorne, and the unique gift of Alex Robinson, we have a cure. A wave of applause erupted, echoing through the halls of the Concord. We owe humanity a debt we can never fully repay. To that end, I am announcing the establishment of the Human Baseline Initiative, a galaxy-wide effort to study human biology and psychology, to better understand their unique potential and to foster interspecies collaboration. Back on Aegis Station, Alex, watching the broadcast with John, tugged on his sleeve. "Papa John, can we go home now? I want to play in a real forest." John smiled, his heart overflowing with love. "Soon, buddy. Very soon." Resources poured into the restoration of Kepler 186 and other human colonies ravaged by the plague. Terraforming equipment reshaped the landscapes. Medical teams rebuilt the infrastructure, and seeds of hope were sown in the ravaged soil. The galaxy was committed to supporting humanity's recovery. Thorn and Nova, their bond forged in the crucible of the crisis, continued their research, exploring the potential of human-alien symbiosis and developing new therapies based on the human baseline data. Their partnership became a symbol of a new era of interspecies collaboration. The cure was deployed across the galaxy, reaching even the most remote and isolated outposts. The Krellian plague, once a seemingly unstoppable force, was contained, its deadly march brought to a halt. A collective sigh of relief swept through the galaxy. Then came an unexpected discovery. Researchers, analyzing data from across the galaxy, noticed a peculiar correlation. The constellation Alex had drawn on the station's observation deck, a seemingly random jumble of stars, corresponded to a nebula rich in specific elements that promoted cellular regeneration. Was it a coincidence? Or was there a deeper connection between the human subconscious and the cure's efficacy? The question lingered, a testament to the mysteries that still lay hidden within the human mind. Humanity, its reputation forever transformed, was formally offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. The offer was accepted, ushering in a new era of interspecies cooperation and understanding. Finally, the day arrived when John and Alex returned to Kepler 186. They were greeted as heroes, a crowd of cheering colonists lining the spaceport. But John, ever protective, shielded Alex from the excessive attention, ensuring that he could still be a child. In the backyard of their newly rebuilt home, Alex knelt down and planted a sapling, its roots reaching deep into the revitalized soil. It was a symbol of hope, renewal, and the enduring connection between humanity and nature. And so, humanity, once a relatively unknown species on the fringes of the galaxy, had risen to become a beacon of hope, its resilience, ingenuity, and compassion illuminating the darkest corners of the cosmos. The alien virus had killed millions, but in the end, it was a human child who showed the galaxy how to live.